Hi guys, welcome back to Chris's Tech Tips. Today, we've got an amazing story. I have a customer who lives in Cedar City, Utah, and I am in Idaho Falls, Idaho. He called me up a couple weeks ago and said he needed a service on his RZR, and he was gonna drive his RZR all the way here. So he shows up on my doorstep yesterday. He drove the entire way, and according to the odometer, 681.3 miles just to come up here and get it serviced. Kick back, relax, enjoy this video. Hopefully I'll get an interview with Doug, a super good customer and friend of mine, when he comes and picks his RZR up. I guess we better get to work. Let's get to it.
All right, let's go ahead and start on the air filter.
Yeah, definitely want to change that.
Okay, let's go ahead and drop the oil out of this.
Make sure you don't drop that crush washer. Well, for 700 miles, oil's not bad. But these are a high performance machine and little PM maintenance. Definitely a lot cheaper than uh-oh maintenance.
Now, on this particular bottle, I like to use a strap wrench and come in through the side. Right here, you can see the oil is actually draining down the front of the motor. Now, you want to make sure you clean that up after you get done servicing it. Also to note that I marked the oil filter with the date. That way, you could just take a quick glance at the oil filter and know when you last serviced the machine. Then I just take a rag and tighten the oil filter down snug.
Today we are running the PS4 heavy duty, the 10W50 from 0 to 130. So this is a little bit better for hotter weather. Doug lives in Utah, southern Utah, close to Arizona, so it's hot. So that makes sense. The book says 2.5 quarts. I like to put maybe 2.6, 2.7. The oil filter and everything, it takes a second to get that oil up on top. And I don't know if you've noticed this with your RZR 1000. When it's cold and you go out there and start it, you hear that clackety clack. Kind of sounds like there's no oil. This kind of helps it because there's a little bit more oil up in there and it's quicker to get up on top and quiet that noise down. Okay, we've got the brand new oil in. We've got the oil filter on. Let's go ahead and start it, pressure it up, check the oil level. Perfect. Now listen to this, how it sounds when I start. Okay, you don't hear that clackety clack. That's perfect. So we've got the oil change, the oil filter, front differential oil. I went ahead and flushed that, it was pretty dirty. Rear transmission differential oil, that's all changed up, ready to go. So let's do air filter and spark plugs.
Make sure you wipe that air filter compartment clean. Now we'll go ahead and put that new filter in and install the air filter cover. And you want to take your time because some of these little quick latches can be kind of a pain and they're easy to break.
Spark plug. First thing to do is you take some side angle pliers. Pull these up and out. You don't want to rip up all the cables. As I have pulled those out.
And you can see here they get packed with dirt and they're kind of a bugger to get out sometimes.
16mm extension.
Okay, then I just grab my magnet, fish those spark plugs out, install the new ones. Make sure you check the gap. The next thing I like to do is apply a thin layer of grease to these spark plug caps. That way they install and they remove a lot easier. Plus it's just better water protection.
All right, the next step in the service, I'm gonna go ahead and check the clutches, the primary and the driven. Go ahead and check the belt, make sure everything's wearing good, so let's get into that.
All right, let's grab a floor jack here. And on mine's a low profile floor jack, so I need to use blocks. And of course, you wanna make sure you block the front end because it will slide forward. Oopsie. Okay, now that we've got the front end blocked, we can get the rear end up and we can go ahead and remove that left rear wheel. Just makes it easier access to get to the clutch. Right here, I'm going to remove that left rear shock, and I like to run the nut and bolt back in. That way I don't lose any of the O-rings or spacers for the shock. Right here, I'm removing the duct system, and now I'm going to remove the clutch cover assembly. Now that we've got the clutch cover removed, we can go ahead and pull the drive belt. and I visually inspect the belt to make sure everything's wearing properly. And here's a good time to visually inspect the U-joints on the drive shaft.
Overall, that clutch looks really good.
Alright, you can take a quick peek at the clutch and see that I resurfaced the primary. Now when installing the belt, if it doesn't come with any directional arrows, you just want to install it so you can read what's on the belt. Then I go ahead and spin the secondary so it takes up the slack in the belt tension. Now go ahead and install the clutch cover. Now we'll reinstall the ducting.
There you have it, clutch service. We're doing the brakes. I'm gonna hit all these suspension bushings and O-rings and go ahead and clean those up and then throw some waterproof grease, and that'll tighten those up. And then, I don't know if you've ever noticed, just little trails or whatnot, you'll notice your razor will start squeaking. This really helps with that. So that being said, let's get to it.
On this RZR 1000, you have to remove the lower A-arm in order to get to the brake caliper bolt. Now we'll go ahead and remove those brake caliper bolts. Then we can go ahead and spread those brake pads apart and take a pair of channel locks, and you can actually squeeze the caliper together, which gives you enough clearance to wiggle those brake pads right off. Now with the new brake pads being thicker, I go ahead and remove the set screw. That way I can squeeze the caliper a little bit more in order to get the new pads installed. And using a little persuasion, now I'm going to reinstall the set screw.
Brake pads installed. Next thing I like to do is pull these brake hubs off and just resurface the rotors. Let's do that next.
Right here I'm removing the cotter pin. Then you want to remove the axle nut. Then remove the hub.
Ooh, that smells warm.
And right here I'll take my die grinder with a deburring pad and go ahead and work my way around the rotor. Okay, now I've installed the brake caliper. Now I'm going to go ahead and install this lower A-arm. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and apply some grease to this lower shock bushing. Now let's reattach the shock. No Loctite needed because we're using log nuts.
I went ahead and checked this right side, and as soon as I pulled the wheel and the hub off, the bearing just kind of fell apart. So I kind of just put it back together until I got parts. So now we'll go ahead and pull this apart and I'll show you what I found. There you go. Now, see that? Oh, see, there it goes. Now that's the inner race. There's the bearings. And they still probably would work for a little bit. But whereas Doug has been, driving this thing from Cedar City, now he's gonna drive to Canada, so we gotta make this thing perfect.